Back. We are doing short story elements part 4 now. This is narration. We're looking at narration because it really is a way of helping us, the readers, understand how we should read the story. It gives us a certain perspective of how to actually enter that text or the movie you're watching. Narration is the way in which the author conveys the story to the reader. This can be broken down into 3 parts: point of view, narrative voice, and narrative theme. Point of view: who is telling the story? Narrative voice: how the story is told. Narrative time: when is the story told in relation to the story's events? So if you look here, first one, point of view. This is what you're maybe familiar with, first person, second person, third person. So first person, the story is told by one of the characters in the novel. The narrator refers to himself or herself using the pronoun I or me. Because the narrator is part of the story, you are receiving his or her opinion of what is happening, which is not always accurate or even truthful. So sometimes you have a character in the novel that's actually lying, but they're telling you that story. So sometimes it makes it difficult for us, the readers, to decipher, to figure out how much do we believe the story. So there's an example there from To Kill a Mockingbird. It was times like this when I thought my father, who hated guns, had never been to any wars, was the bravest man who had ever lived. Second person. This is rarely done, but it does happen. The story is told by referring to the person telling the story as you. So it draws the reader in, making them part of that story. Choose Your Own Adventure series is a common one that you can refer to. If you're not familiar with that, maybe you play video games. There are many video games out there where you are spoken to as if you were a general. And so in the general moment, like if you were a general, a soldier goes up to you and says, has a report to tell you. You are now involved in the narrative, right? Third person. The story is told through an entity that is outside of the story. Characters are referred to as he or she or by name. The boy with his fair hair lowered himself down a few feet of rock and began to pick his way toward the lagoon. So this is Lord of the Flies. Alternating person. The story is told through 2 or more alternating points of view. This can be done through different characters. So if you're familiar with fantasy novels, sometimes they focus on one character in one chapter, then another character in the second chapter, and you're sort of moving back between different characters every chapter. Now that we've gone through the idea of point of view, it's time for point of voice. Point of voice has a number of categories, so pay attention closely. Stream of consciousness. The story is told in a way that replicates a person's thought process. Character voice. A character within the story tells the story. Unreliable narrator. The character voice is in the story may not be telling the truth of what is occurring, causing the reader to doubt, question the information. We referred to this earlier when we were looking at first person. Unreliable narrators could be purposefully trying to deceive the reader, or could be unreliable because of a lack of understanding. So, for example, To Kill a Mockingbird, it's told from the eyes of a little girl. So how much can we believe at the time, right? Because of the narrator, in this case, a little child. Epistolary voice. The story is told through a series of documents such as letters, journal entries. And a few different types of text to give you an example. Now, a common thing that we also look at is third person, so third person objective, third person subjective, and third person omniscient voice. It's very important you understand the difference between the 3. Third person objective is the story is told through told in a third person by an objective or unbiased entity, right? They observe things, saying that person is tall, that person is 5 foot whatever, right? 5'11". The idea is that they make very factual comments in the story. Third person subjective. The story is narrated in the third person by an entity that conveys the thoughts, feelings, and opinions of one or more characters. So they may have some comments about certain characters. He said that very harshly. That word harshly, the adjective, really describes what the narrator is probably feeling about that scenario or about that character. So subjective is a biased point of view, objective is unbiased point of view. Finally, third person omniscience is the idea the story is narrated in the third person by an entity that has an understanding of all character thoughts, feelings, and opinions. Omniscient means all-knowing, so they see, they hear everything that's going on. They can tell you the inner thoughts of a character, they can tell you what's going to happen later on, they can tell you they can tell you details that you should not be able to know in that moment because they are all seeing. They can tell you every little small detail. Last thing, narrative time. Basically, you should know this is pretty easy. Past tense, present tense, future tense. So, things that happen in the past, things that happen currently, things happen in the future. I'll let you read that yourself. The idea of narration is to help you understand how to read a text. And when you understand how it's read, sometimes you may analyze their narrator. Sometimes an essay question may be focused on the narrator. For example, the idea of the unreliable narrator. That could be an essay question, perhaps. So it's important that we understand how to actually look and what these different points of views actually mean and these types of voices mean. Let's see. So for your practice, your exercise, you're going to think of a story. You can think of a movie if you don't have a story on the top of your head. But you're going to write down the point of view, narrative voice, narrative time. How does this style of narration enhance the story? So think deeply about this. Find a story that you are very familiar with. If you are very unfamiliar with it, time to maybe rewatch a few clips on YouTube or something like that to rejolt your memory about that particular story, about that particular movie or documentary or TV series, something that you are familiar with so you can answer these questions. You're going to do this for 2 different stories. After we've learned narration, it's time to move on to the next thing, which is one of the biggest parts, themes. But keep in mind, it's important that you review everything that we've been learning from part 1, plot, part 2, characters, part 3, the idea of conflict, and part 4, narration. So, have fun, enjoy the activity, and I'll talk to you soon.